If he ever cuts down on the strikeouts just a little bit, he's going to be one of these guys, maybe that goes down in history. He's got that kind of ability.
Welcome into Northside Territory. This is your co-host, Patrick Mooney of The Athletic, leading off a very special episode with a very special guest, our guy, Gordon Wittenmyer of the Cincinnati Enquirer. Gordon is still a Chicago media factor, best known here for his tireless work at the Chicago Sun-Times. As a longtime baseball beat reporter, Gordon is still extremely curious and passionate about the job. He feels an enormous sense of responsibility to the fans, the readers, as well as his sources. I mean, competing against him in Chicago, you had that voice in the back of your head like, what is Gordon working on? What does he have that maybe I don't? And if you've ever read any of his coverage, you'll know that he's also not afraid to piss people off. So with the Reds coming to town on the final weekend of a disappointing season for both teams, it seemed like a good time to check in. Gordon, thank you for joining us, bringing a wealth of knowledge and experience to the podcast.
Well.
We're always texting and catching up, but this one seemed appropriate with the Reds coming into town for I don't know what you'd call this irrelevant series.
I don't know about that. Back in Cincinnati, we just had people kept telling me with Pittsburgh in town, it was a battle for fourth place. I said, I think it's a battle for fifth place. But I don't know what you'd call this one. Is it an upgrade? Is it a downgrade? I mean, they boo the White Sox for winning the other day? I mean, that world's upside down right now, right?
Well, I'm curious, like, what happened to the Reds this year? Because I think it's very relevant to the Cubs of like, all right, you got some talent. You think you're building something, and it doesn't always work.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I did do a lot of comparisons with the Reds and the Cubs coming into this season. The first thing that happened were some key injuries, okay? Mm-hmm. But everybody's got those. They had him out of the chute. A guy who, again, you don't know what you were going to get. Matt McLain. He was their best player last year after he debuted in May. So he only had 4.5 months of service time, and then over a month of that was also spent on the IL. So as good as he was in the time that he played, you don't know what a young player like that's going to give you. And he missed all season with a shoulder injury and then a rib cage thing. They missed their center fielder for 3 stretches on the IL, pretty much in the first half of the season, including a broken wrist coming out of spring training. Now, the significance of that isn't like they didn't lose, Ruth and Gehrig. What they lost, but for a team of that market size that did double down on pitching in the offseason and got a lot of good pitching. Yeah. The biggest significance of that was they're not a good fielding team, and those were their 2 best fielders. Mm-hmm. So they get out of the gate looking. The outfield kind of played up a little bit for a while defensively. The infield was kind of a mess, and they're one of the worst fielding teams in baseball. Even now, even with TJ Friedl, that center fielder, back, they just never recovered defensively. And I'm not sure that those 2 guys would have been enough to put them over the top. Defensively, anyway. Yeah. And again, who knows what you get out of McLain, either side of the ball. Other than that, this is a team that was designed to win at the margins, and they lost way too often at those margins. Yeah. A team that was built with speed and going to be aggressive on the base pass. We were promised week 1 of spring training, we're going to be even better on the bases this year because we're working really hard. We're making sure that these guys are going to be, we think, better prepared in every situation this year when they're on the bases, for instance. They looked unprepared oftentimes. They made mistakes. They made the way I talked to one of the team officials who asked me what I saw. And I told him, I said, you guys make way too many mistakes, and you have to win doing those things. As soon as you lose doing those things, you can't win anything. And my takeaway on the base running is you don't have thumpers in the middle of your lineup. So you can be good base runners with all that athleticism and speed and the rules changes and everything, but you have to be exceptional. They made more outs on the bases than anybody else, and the Cubs know a little bit about that.
Yeah. I'm thinking of Dale Swaim's, like a vitamin, one a day. With the
exactly. That's exactly what I saw. Thanks for bringing that up, because that's perfect. That's what we saw all year. And then in the field, they were terrible, and they did things like stick with Noelvi Marte, a rookie who played 6 weeks last year and got popped for steroids in spring training. Yeah. Missed the first 80 games of the year. Gets that 10 days in the minor leagues to come back and get ready to get back on the roster, and he looked like crap in the minor leagues. And they brought him up anyway because he's athletic. He looks the part. They thought they could get better defense at third base, bringing him up. They didn't. He looked terrible. He was throwing the ball all over the place. He couldn't buy a hit. And then he was the guy he was the biggest deficit on that team all year long. And I'm not even counting being gone for 80 games. He might have been a bigger deficit when he was there because he was unprepared. And I've talked to people in the front office who saw more things than I did. Not only was he unprepared, didn't know where to go with the ball whenever he managed to catch it. And then even if he did know, maybe he threw it over the guy's head. But he also half-assed plays, especially down the stretch. And, man, this is a major leagues. If you're a kid, especially, you can't have that. I mean, you or I, if we were running things, would say, dude, you're at least sitting, and maybe you're sitting in Louisville. But
like if I was your VP of common sense, that's what I'd be saying. You were running the team.
Shout out to Jason Carr.
Well, I think it's interesting because, like, you knew have known David Bell a long time. I crossed paths with him briefly while he was on Dale Swaim's staff. Like, this is what got him fired, right? I mean,
it's absolutely what got him fired.
What happened? What went down with Bell in Cincinnati?
Yeah, and we got enough of that on the record.
Yeah,
talking to some people behind the scenes, it was made crystal clear. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Okay.
Accountability. Ellie De La Cruz, a wonderful talent, amazing talent. If he ever cuts down on the strikeouts just a little bit, he's going to be one of these guys, maybe that goes down in history. He's got that kind of ability, and he became an all-star this year. But he also does, there was a play about a month ago. They're still technically in it. Pop up on the infield on the second base side of the bag. He's playing shortstop. He goes over and he clowns around. He does some version of that. Remember what Elvis Andrews used to do with Beltre and then clown around and pretend like he's going to catch it. No, the other guy can catch it. Yeah. Ball dropped in between him. The second baseman got the air. So you're thinking, and if you wanted to be like completely generous and give everybody the benefit of the doubt, you could maybe convince yourself that he wasn't clowning. He just screwed up some other way. But as soon as you watch the play again, and then as soon as you talk to anybody around it, he was definitely clowning. And he was right back in the lineup the next day. And not only that, but the explanation after the game was no explanation. It was a ball dropped and we didn't make the play. It wasn't, we can't have that and it will be addressed, which is the easy thing to say. So these were the kinds of things. I love David Bell to death. I don't think he thinks I do because of some of the stuff I've had to write or ask about. But he's a wonderful person. Just a great human being, maybe the best in the game that I've ever run across.
Wow.
And he also, he probably knew more baseball at 12 than I've got a lifetime to ever learn, right? I mean, he's a generation guy. His granddad was an all-star. His dad was an all-star. He played 12 years in the big leagues. All the respect in the world for his baseball knowledge. I just don't know that it always that it always played. I mean, he played for some of the best managers too.
Yeah.
Lou Piniella. My God. I guarantee you Lou Piniella wouldn't put up with that crap.
We're looking for real ways to boost our nutrition and just found a protein shake that actually tastes amazing. It's called Orgain, and it's been a game changer.
Orgain is the leader in real protein-powered nutrition that understands that being good for you doesn't have to taste bad. It's the organic ingredients we're looking for, but I don't want a grainy battle with my taste buds every day. You know what I'm saying? It's giving smooth milkshake vibes. That's Orgain, and they have a brand new 30-gram complete protein shake that offers protein-packed real nutrition designed to satisfy your cravings without all the sugar.
It gives me energy, provides muscle support, and helps manage hunger too. It's also made without soy ingredients and made with no artificial flavors or sweeteners.
Orgain 30-gram protein shakes are available at Costco and Orgain.com. If you want to get in on the delicious protein-packed nutrition today, head to Orgain.com/FOUL and use the code FOUL for 20% off your order. Once again, that's Orgain.com/FOUL for 20% off. And make sure you use promo code FOUL so they know FT sent you.
I want to get back to Lou in a minute, but first, I'm cycling through old Cubs managers we've covered. Is there any chance David Ross or Joe Maddon get into the mix in Cincinnati or at all in this hiring cycle anywhere?
So if there was ever a job out there that might be a fit for Joe,
Go on.
and that might be the kind of a place that would even remotely considering having a conversation with him.
Okay.
It might be this one for this reason only. Now, I say all that because we know as soon as Joe was done managing with the Angels, he burned every damn bridge in Major League Baseball with that book of his and his podcast, and he's ripping everybody up and down that runs anything at all in this game anymore.
With all due respect, though.
With all due respect, I forgot to say that. you and I both love Joe, and you know how much you know what kind of relationship we have. But the only reason that he could be considered a fit is because the way Lawrence Holmes puts it, like, it calls it his superpower. Like, his superpower as a manager is making young players better, is making young players believe that they can win the whole damn thing. And maybe he has a shelf life with some of his methods. We probably saw a little bit of that, but this might be the right kind of team at the right time for that. That's the only reason I say it. But you'd have to have a number of people in the organization buy that. You'd also have to have Joe interested in it. I do think Joe made a lot of money on his last couple of contracts. And for a team that's probably not going to pay a lot to the next manager, that could also be a fit, because I don't think Joe's looking for a payday as much as an opportunity to manage again. If he still feels the way he did the last time I talked to him. So, and Rossi, I think, might be as close to the best fit for this job as anybody out there, honestly. Because exactly what they're looking for. Like, they don't want to blow up a clubhouse culture where guys are tight and guys feel like they're part of something bigger, which is the thing that David Bell did establish there. So they've got that in place, and most of those players, especially all these young guys, I mean, most of the roster will probably be back next year. A lot like the Cubs. Well, we're just going to change managers and run it out there again, but for different reasons. So we saw. I mean, Ross kind of has that, right? He's got a bedside
100%.
manner too.
Yes.
He also doesn't put up with shit, right? He doesn't, and we saw that too. And that's what they need desperately. And Ross has the credibility as a recent player. He's also a catcher who pitchers love to throw to. So if you're trying to get the most out of a roster, especially a young roster, where you might not be able to go out and tweak much from outside the organization as things go, he might be the right guy. Derek Johnson is the pitching coach there, who's done a good job. I would suspect he'll stay. And I think they know each other, and I think they've run across each other. I could be wrong, but knowing the two of them, I think they would work really well together.
Okay.
And it's just that the personality of that team feels like a fit for David Ross's personality, and what the Reds are specifically looking for, I think Ross has it.
You had a great column angle. I believe it was in spring training. It may have been on Cap's website, this idea of the great managerial experiment in Chicago, like this Moneyball question of what is a manager truly worth? I mean, seeing the Craig Counsell era get off to such an underwhelming start, what are your takeaways, and what do you think the industry is thinking, looking at what's happened with the highest paid manager in the game in a really sort of like so-so organization?
The so-so organization is the telling phrase there. That's the point. Look, I think everybody in the game pretty much felt like Jed Hoyer did when he went out and spent all that money on Craig Counsell, that Craig Counsell was, if not the best manager in the game, the best available manager in the game, and one of the couple of best, right?
Yeah.
And so you also knew he knew the division real well and probably the Cubs real well. But what did we find out? Jesus Christ. If you give him a crappy bullpen, he's going to get crappy results at the end of the game. He did all the same shit that David Ross did. All of it. I mean, go back and look. He discovered what Christopher Morel couldn't do. He discovered what bullpen pieces he didn't have. And all the way along, some of the young players that could play and couldn't play or weren't ready yet, that Rossi said they call them prospects for a reason, right? And Counsell had a lot of experience with those kinds of teams in Milwaukee. Maybe they were different players, and so, and maybe the organization was different. Maybe they were giving him different levels of developed players and pitching that was ready to go. So
a lot of ex-Cubs up in Milwaukee now too, that kind of cycled through the Cubs without ever doing anything, just killing it in Milwaukee now.
So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and what's going to wind up happening? I mean, I think if they go, let's say, did they lose last night or win last night in Philly?
They won in part because the Phillies had clinched the night before.
Oh yeah, right.
You can see those videos and know who's going to win the next game.
So kind of depending on, like, I think if they go 3-2, they'll finish with an identical record to last year. And
that sounds right.
And so, the Phillies are a better team, but are they going to roll over as they line up their pitching? Who knows? Are the Reds motivated after the change in managers? They lost their first game after the manager changed. So who the hell knows? They're not any better than the Cubs. So maybe they go 3-2. Maybe they go, 5-0. I don't know. But it's the same team and it's the same results, and they're further out of the playoffs than they were last year after getting rid of a guy they said they loved a month after they said they loved him to go hire the best manager in the world for the highest price ever, and they get Dick. So this is, to me, what it speaks to. Here's what I've always wondered about managing, and I think this kind of underscores the theory I always had. If you're a bad manager, you can make a big difference. You can torpedo a team. You can lose a team. And we've probably seen that in Chicago.
Yes.
Maybe recently. But anyhow.
Are you talking about Pedro on the south side?
I'm talking about, you might
if you go back in some Cubs managers for sure.
One of a few. Yeah.
Been
a few.
Yeah.
So
like, I'm not a lunatic, my quaddy season.
I didn't. I wasn't going to name names or anything.
Okay,
like that.
all right.
But I think a bad manager can make a difference, and if you make a mistake there, I think there's a lot of the managers in the game, today, historically, a lot of them fall right in the middle, and then some of them get these reputations as being great, and some of them prove it like in places over. It's an incredibly rare manager that can, I think, make a difference to make a good team great or a great team a champion. It's tempting to say Bruce Bochy is a guy like that, or Tito Francona is a guy like that.
Yeah.
Dusty always seemed to get a lot out of his guys, sometimes more than you had a right to expect. And if you go back, a lot of people rip Dusty. Go back and look at his record. Everywhere he went, they won. Everywhere he went, they won 90 games plus. So you don't see that everywhere. So there's guys like that, but there's also guys like that, like Joe Torre was an amazing manager, Hall of Fame guy in New York. He wasn't before that. He wasn't in St. Louis.
True. Yeah.
Francona in his first job, same thing. So when you're trying to climb the ladder on good managers to great managers, I think that's a fool's errand most of the time. And if you spend more money than anybody else does in the history of the game to do it, well, I don't know what level of fool on the fool's errand thing that is. But
well, I want to shift it towards one of your, I would imagine one of your favorite managers ever, Lou Piniella. Last time I saw you was around the trade deadline, and you were working furiously to put this story together. Can you explain to our listeners kind of how that project came together and where Lou is at this stage of his life?
Yeah, I had Lou in my first team I covered were some of the Mariners teams in the 90s, and Lou was the manager. And then I had his first year in Chicago was my first year in Chicago. And we had we compared a few notes.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
But we know a few years ago he missed the Hall of Fame by a vote, and then the Veterans Committee got together again. He was up again this past December and missed it again by one vote.
Oof.
And people thought he was going to get in. La Russa said, we all thought this was the time he was going to get in. I don't know why. And I don't think La Russa was a voter this time. I think he was the last time. I tried to get a hold of Lou. Lou's been in bad health. He's had some health scares the last bunch of years. He had what he called a mild stroke in 16, 17. No, I guess something like that. Middle of the decade, and then he was working for the Reds in a advisory role and had a more serious stroke, and that one affects him a little bit. That still affects him to this day. He's recovered mostly from it. But he's just he doesn't get around quite the same, and it takes him a little longer to pull some thoughts sometimes. And then subsequent to that, he had cancer, and he went and sought treatment in procedures and treatment in Turkey because there was some deal with the FDA here. Not that it wasn't approved, but it was something about the difference between here. So he goes to Turkey, and he's clear of that. So he's on the upside health wise. But I wanted to get with him about missing the Hall of Fame. I wanted to get with him about what's gone on with him lately, just how he was doing. Yeah. And so I tried in December, and he wasn't in a place to talk to anybody. I tried again a little later. Finally, the Reds were going through Tampa in July, and he was willing to make it work. I went over to his house for a couple of hours, spent some time with him, and met his wife. I think I might have met her once briefly years ago, but she's a sweetheart. They're great, and we just talked about everything. Man, we talked about the Reds and Marge Schott and the Cubs, and talked about the Mariners, and he's just now starting to get back around again. So I don't know that anybody else talked to him since the Hall of Fame thing. It was emotional for him for a minute.
Yeah.
And next time he's eligible for the Hall of Fame, Bochy could be on that ballot. Dusty will be on that ballot. Francona could be on that ballot. Yeah. That's gonna be awfully tough to get in when there's like 16 voters, and you got to get 12 votes, and there's only so many spots on the ballots.
I mean, him, to me, I just think of the main word in the Hall of Fame, like fame and famous. And I just think him as a character and just a larger than life figure in iconic stadiums, big markets, as a player, as a manager, being around a lot of Hall of Fame, personalities. And it takes me back to the kind of the beginning of my time covering the Cubs and how much I learned from just watching you do the job, watching Sully and others do the job, and us having a few adult beverages after our work shifts. And you've always stressed how kind of unique the Cubs beat is. And if I remember it right, I mean, you've covered the Mariners, Angels, Twins, Cubs, and Reds.
Yep. Nailed it. Yep.
So like what I feel like people go to Wrigley Field, or if you're a Cubs fan, sometimes in baseball, so regional and local, you kind of miss some of the wider angle of things. Like what makes covering the Cubs so unique, and why has it been kind of such a circus? And I don't know, have they lost some of that, whether it was Lou's personality or the 1908, that great chase? Like where do you kind of see the Cubs now as like kind of an institution?
IBM back in the day, Microsoft trying to establish unfair monopolies on revenue sources and not giving a rat's ass about the customer. I mean, where do you want to start? Like honestly, one of the things I told Lou, he asked how some of the people were back in Chicago, and I said, Lou, it hadn't been the same since you and Ozzy left.
That's true.
And it's really true, man.
And
actually, that's a microcosm of what's going on in the game with the personalities have cycled out. The bigger personalities that told it like it was, or at least the way they saw it, they don't exist anymore. Everybody's more careful how they talk, and everybody's more media friendly. Media is allowed to ask stupid ass questions and get away with it, and then the manager will still answer and not make fun of them like they used to do. And when I was a punk ass kid asking dumb questions,
no such thing as a dumb question, Gordon.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. Yeah, right. Okay. It's in Chicago. To me, I mean, Chicago always had that allure of history handed down for generations. People, take it's the Mike Royko mystique of it, right? The stuff he used to write about, make fun of him, but he always, but he loved him, but he hated him, and the rooftop stuff was just people on lawn chairs. The same way people take their shirts off and hang them on the basket, or before they had a basket, hang it on the wall in the outfield, so they put the basket up. That disappeared long ago, and when the latest ownership came in, ironically enough, I mean, they bought from a corporation, and then they made it all corporate. Everything became ultra monetized and defined for marketing. And the Cubs, at the risk of glazing over some eyes of anybody that might be listening, I mean, the Cubs to me are they're the they amplified tanking in the game. They normalized it.
100%.
I think more than the Astros did. I mean, the Astros were egregious, and the Astros did it for way too long, and they effed up a whole bunch of stuff along the way before they finally got it right. And then they had all these resources and player resources, and they won all these games. Okay, but when the Cubs did it, when the Chicago freaking Cubs, with all that money and all those resources that should be the Yankees and the Dodgers of the Midwest, some version of that, decided, no, it's okay. And to put it in context, we know, you and I did a lot of reporting on it. The sale was so leveraged that they literally didn't have enough money in Theo Epstein's first couple of years to flex those types of resources. So they just tore it all apart, just sold off everything. And did a Kansas City Royals, Milwaukee Brewers, Cincinnati Red, name the small market, just completely tanked. And the game incentivized it. The rules of the game incentivized it. And when they were successful as a big market team and sold that bill of goods to the fans that, hey, it's okay that we don't win now. Take a look at Chris Bryant at AAA. Wow. Look at our prospect rankings.
Yeah.
Look at Mendy Alcantara. Holy crap, he's 100 on the prospect list. I mean, aren't you excited? I mean, I know we lost 100 games, but aren't you excited? What's coming? And then, and then of course they did it. And then of course they jacked all the prices, and then they refused to sort of engage with the luxury tax the way, say, the Dodgers have. Even in even in a incremental level of what the Dodgers have done to build on what they had, and it just deteriorated. And now they don't even go all in ever, and they're still sitting at the luxury tax threshold with a bunch of mediocrity. And what it's done is, the bottom line on this whole thing is, it has created a culture in the game, a relationship between ownership / teams and their fans of, it's okay that we don't try to win this year. You know what we're doing because you're smart just like we are. You get it. And by the way, the ticket prices are only going up 5% this year. But we're gonna win pretty soon because you see that kid in AA coming. Oh man, he's gonna be something special. So hang in there. You know what we're doing. We're smart, and when we win, we're gonna win big, boy. But in the meantime, it's a process. That's bullshit. That's not what professional sports. That's not why they're invented. There's literally rules about that. You have to try to win, and you're charging money for this. So I think that bill of goods and that new culture, you can pin a disproportionate amount of that on the Cubs as a legacy for that period in Cubdom.
Well, Gordon, thank you. I think this will be our first episode. We'll have to be labeled with explicit language. So thank you for that. No, you're good. You're good. No, you're good. That's what the warning's there for. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But I look forward to seeing you at Wrigley this weekend. I have a feeling the press box will be hearing different versions of that grinding my gears rant at various points of the series, and definitely owe you a drink after one of these games this weekend. Appreciate it, man.
I'll take you up on that, man. All right. Good talking to you.